Okay, let's see how fast people can get back. That's the right camera. Don't ask me why it can't seem to do anything correctly. Hey, Jeff, how's it going? Hey, Shaggy. Yeah, it was on my computer camera, and I selected that one beforehand, but it didn't take. And there's no way to change cameras in the middle of a stream because that's genius by YouTube, of course. Those idiots. Anyhow, if you want, folks, Chris says hi, little one. Um, if you want, if you want to call up, if you hit that link right there at the top and call up that picture that I did on the as the thumbnail, I'm going to be referring back to that. Hey, Mr. Virtue, later, so that that's what I'll be referring to. So that can come in. I don't know how, and I'm not sure if I even can without more software do like a picture in a picture, like the guys who really know what they're doing do on these things where they're constantly switching and show you a clip of something. Hey, Alex, how's it going? Had any chance to do any of that research on there? Find anything? Well, this is Keith. Yeah, I say there's stuff. I think we'll probably wait till the next time somebody who knows how to do all this stuff is visiting me, and then we. I understand, Alex. No problem. Hey, David. So when there's somebody here who knows what they're doing, that would be a good time to do that. Yeah, I say there may be something that'll work just fine. Say she's got two sons, I've got a grandson, and you know various. Oh, and my daughter's actually in. She does cybersecurity for the Department of Energy, so she probably knows how to do something like that. Maybe not. Who knows? But anyhow, next time somebody's visiting who knows what they're doing, it's probably be a couple of months, but that would probably be the best time, you know. But yeah, um, for a couple reasons. Yeah, this one should be pretty good, Alex. Yeah, it's just one of those things. When YouTube decides to work one camera when I want the other, there's no way to switch. Genius. Um, but anyhow, so uh, this week, Coulter from Mining Magnets is sending me a couple of splitters. One is kind of his version of my bucket splitter, and another one is a smaller splitter and sample splitters. And so I'm going to be testing those out. And he also is sending me some sand, some plain, it's just placer sand, and some magnetite. The theory being that we can make artificial samples and then we can kind of see how the zoning works and stuff before you blend it, how to blend it, how to split it, and all these. And you can actually see what's happening. Plus, we could do like take grab samples before it's properly blended, run them through his magnetic separator, which he's sending me one of, and then see exactly how variable the results are. So it should be pretty cool, and that ought to be really nice. Um, yes, but unfortunately, Shaggy, I haven't figured out how to make gravity work to a point. Yeah. And yeah, Coulter's got a really good magnetic separator, and so that's kind of our plan. Any luck, it'll show up tomorrow, and then we can take the video tomorrow. Maybe another day. It's in transit between Boise and and Helena here. And anyhow, so that's the deal. So yeah, if you want to call up that picture that I put the link in um, at the beginning. Here, I'll do it again. Watch this. Learned this one years ago. There it is again. Wow. I can herd electrons, sort of. They're in a corral. Um, but anyhow, when you look at that, what you're looking at there is some placer gold that was kind of part of my cut from a dredging operation on the middle fork of the Boise River several years ago. Had a good time up there. It's really when my channel kind of took off, was a lot of those videos there. But anyhow, that's placer gold from a dredge. And as you'll notice, if you look at those placer particles there, one of them is very angular, real pointy and stuff. Also, it looks like it's got some mercury on it. Now, that would make perfect sense because there was a big mine just outside of Atlanta, Idaho there, and that probably escaped from the mill. There you go, Dave. So anyhow, that was kind of interesting. I didn't see that by eye. I just realized that tonight when we loaded it. That's a picture Eva took from her camera. That little bead you see, that was kind of the smallest little flake I could get out of the sample that I had. And I had Eva cupel that. So we've got a nice bead. Now that's what we generally get from our smelting operations and assaying operations. And the nice thing is now you can take a look at a bead, and that is pretty close to 1/100th of a gram. Okay. And while that may seem pretty small, when it comes to assaying, that's ginormous. Okay. That's the size bead you would get for 10 ounce to the ton material if you use one standard assay ton of sample, which is twice what Eva can use with the crucibles and furnace we have. So if Eva ever got a bead like that out of hard rock, we're looking at 20 ounces to the ton indicated grade. And the problem is, if you're looking at that same bead, which is smaller by weight than those placer particles there, if you were to have either a hard rock, a big open pit heap leach operation or a commercial scale placer operation, that right there translates in about one of those particles in a 5-gallon bucket struck level of dirt. Okay. About 1/100th of an ounce per ton. And that, because right now that's about $19, $18.50. That's actually profitable grade for a placer mining operation or an open pit heap leach at a large scale. Okay. Now, if you were to find that same amount of gold, that little bead there, in about 6.5 pounds of rock, 3 kilograms, now you're looking at 1/10 of an ounce per ton, which, hey, muckraker. So if you look at there's a link just above you there, muckraker. If you click on that in another tab, you'll have the picture we're referring to. So I say with that size bead in a 3 kilogram sample, you're looking at 1/10 of an ounce to the ton. That's really good for placer on a large scale. If you're doing something like, Gold Rush or something like that with 1/10 of an ounce to the ton, you'd be making money hand over fist. Okay. Jim, who's again not here tonight.
Well, he's got stuff.
I feel so abandoned. He didn't even bother to call.
He has stuff to do. You know that.
But anyhow, So yeah, if Jim could find, a good deposit of that grade, he'd be happier than heck. Yep. It's that'd be like $200 a yard. You know, his break even at the scale that he operates, which is tens of tons per hour, is somewhere around $10 a ton, I believe. So yeah, he would love that grade. If you had um, a 300-gram sample with that much gold in it, you're looking at 1 ounce to the ton. And if you had a standard 30, it's 28 point something gram, 1 assay ton sample for a fire assay, and got that big a bead, you're looking at 10 ounces to the ton. So that gives you an idea just how little gold it takes to be profitable. For what we're doing, muriatic acid to get gold out of tellurides, if you were to put some nitric in there, you should be able to dissolve the gold. You're probably going to get a lot of reagent consumption, but I'm not sure. I know that the tellurides, you can vaporize the gold fairly easily. So I'm not sure what's the best way to extract from tellurides. Chris, are you still here? I know he's feeling a little poorly tonight, but hi, blind dude. Say Chris should be here. Well, I know a fair amount about a lot of things. I'm not real knowledgeable on a lot of the other things besides metallic gold. So I'm just not sure, Muckraker. If you wait a little bit, there will be somebody here who will know. Lauren, are you here? If you are, maybe you know the answer to that. Yeah, Alex, but can you what would be the best way on a small scale to get gold out of a telluride ore sample? Anyhow, well, Chris says sulfuric acid. And you can get concentrated sulfuric from Lowe's as a drain cleaner. I just checked the local chemical supply house here in Helena, and the concentrated sulfuric reagent grade stuff, they had 93%. It's running like $78 a gallon, and it's then there's additional hazmat fees and stuff. The cheapest way to get sulfuric acid is go down to your local parts store like CarQuest or whatever. And if you don't need super high concentrations, get battery acid for, at today's price, $33 for a 5-gallon jug. No, Drano is entirely different. It's not Drano. It's a sulfuric acid drain opening stuff. It'll be in the drain clog department, but it's not going to be Drano. It'll say sulfuric acid on it. Okay. And so you can get a fairly strong one there, or you can just try battery acid. And tellurides are actually kind of an alloy with the gold. It's not like the sulfides where the gold is kind of encapsulated in the sulfides. It's actually alloyed with the tellurium. The tellurium and the gold form a thing. There's some tellurides that are like 60-some% gold. Hey, Rock. Muckraker there has a telluride gold sample from Colorado and was wondering what's the easiest way to get the gold out of it. Let's see if you can concentrate down the telluride. I don't think it's largely gold. Yeah, Alex. I think he just has a little sample he wants to play with. Anyhow, So you can see how little gold it takes to be valuable. Now, here's where it gets unpleasant. 10, 8, 10, the who's that? 80 pounds of cores, huh? You'll need to crush it too. Crush it and concentrate it first, muckraker. But anyhow, you can see if you had just one of those particles per 5-gallon bucket, how big a sample do you need to get a good idea what's the average grade? If you had one of those beads or one of those flakes that you see there for every 5-gallon bucket, you're probably going to need like 10 buckets, 20 buckets to get good statistics. You know, if you take one bucket, you got a 50-50 chance of not getting anything. Well, okay, you could have nothing, you could have one, or you could have more than one. One bucket isn't going to tell you much. You need like 10 or 20 buckets and then combine the total weight. And okay, Alex, thank you. So there's the problem. This is called the nugget effect. Say you have, if you're taking a hard rock sample, which is a whole 30 grams, how many 30-gram samples does it take to get good statistics? A crap load. I mean, hundreds. That's why placer miners do not fire assay. Okay. It's just not effective. It's not that it's costly, it's it doesn't work. You know, it's like the equivalent of trying to haul a 200-ton load with a pickup truck. It just doesn't work. So the way placer miners do it is they will actually process the appropriate size sample depending on the size of the gold they're expecting and such. And again, this is why they like to run like a cubic yard or so in order to find out. Obviously, it's kind of hard to pan a cubic yard, so they usually use like a high banker or something like that. And so you really can't do small samples with placer, period. Just get that out of your little head. And the coarser the gold, the bigger sample you have to do. If you got nuggets, and that's most of your gold is in nuggets, you're going to have to do multiple yard samples to get good statistics. Now, on the other hand, okay, that same principle works the other way. If you have small enough particles, then you can get good statistics with a reasonable size sample for assaying. Our particular ore has gold that is 70% passing 6.8 microns. 6.8 microns, according to the little chart here, is about 0.0002 inches. 0.0002 inches. And that bead you see in the picture, classes, where are you? Milligrams is about 0.009 inches. Okay. So if we take the diameter of the bead, 0.009 divided by 0.0002, you get 45. So our gold particles are like 1/45th of the diameter of that bead. Now here's where it gets fun. Okay. 45 times 45 times 45 equals 91,125 particles. And that is the fun part. Let's see. Did I grab the wrong number here? No, that's what it says. 0.009 inches. So, in our ore, a standard assay ton, let's see. We're looking at, instead of that one particle, if we were to run 1 ounce to the ton, that would be in 300 grams. You would have 80,000 particles. Was that what I said? 91,000? 90,000 particles. So 9,000 per. Okay, so in a standard assay ton, you'd have somewhere in the neighborhood of 9,000 particles. Okay. And that means gold particles. The bead I'm talking about, if you, here, I'm going to do it again. If you click on that link, Rock, you'll see a picture. That's all that is. And that shows you what I'm referring to. It's a little gold bead and some placer particles and stuff, so people can actually look at it. Okay. Now I'm going to be doing a video theoretically later this week once I get some splitters in from mining magnets and stuff, and we'll play that game. But now, because the hard rock gold that we're dealing with has this thousands of particles per sample, per assay sample, you can get good statistics with a small sample. The problem is that if you get a chunk of gold, just one little chunk of gold like that, it's going to just drive your assay value through the roof. And this is why, and Rock, you can verify this. If you're doing a bunch of samples of a structure or whatever, and they look pretty similar visually as you're taking them and stuff, and you get this really high number, initially what you do is you just discount that number. You throw it out. If you have a reason, you might want to go and take another split off of that sample or two and run that. But it makes things really, really difficult, And so depending upon the ore, it can be a problem or not. I mean, that particular particle, let me get this here. Where are we? I think it's 18 mesh. Yeah. 4/100ths is 18 mesh. So that little bead is about an 18 mesh bead. But when you're doing hard rock sampling, the grades involved in commercial viability require so little gold in that sample that any extra chunk somewhere is just going to drive your numbers crazy. Always watch for that sort of thing. If it's going boing, boing, you can examine those boangs to see what's going on, or you can just discount them, just knock them down to the other level for your calculations for profitability and stuff like that, what your average ore, because those will totally screw up your average ore grade calculations. They will throw it way up at, Yeah, Rob, I say the fine gold is much better for sampling and for leaching The coarser gold is a lot easier to recover by gravity separation, you know, and this is where, depending upon what you've got, you need to be thinking about this ahead of time. And this is why, just because you can't pan gold out of the hard rock doesn't mean there's not gold in it. We our gold, it doesn't even settle out of the water in a minute, most of it. We tried actually putting it in a bucket with some water, stirring it up after crushing. You have to crush it first, of all, and let it settle for a minute. Pour off about half the water. Do it again, and then finally settle the solids in the decant, the overflow stuff. And that was running better than the average grade. The stuff that wound up in the bottom was only like 25% of the total. It was ridiculous. And so this is, say in hard rock that happens. You can have placer that has very, very fine gold. And if there's enough of it, you could potentially leach it. But this is also why you have two-stage systems. You'll have a gravity system and then a leaching system afterwards, because in many cases the gold particle sizes vary over the size ranges to where these don't leach worth of crap, but the gravity just fine. These don't gravity worth of crap, but they leach just fine. So you got to do a two-stage system depending upon how it works. In Tucson, at Ryan's mine there, we were getting 80-85% recovery, just straight gravity. I don't know how much floated away and how much was still just crystal locked. It wasn't super finely ground. So I say these are the sort of things that it's you have to take into account. And placer gold, yeah, you're going to need big samples. Hard rock gold, I usually start with like a half a bucket or so, at least, if I can do it, because I have the crushing equipment. It's pretty easy for me to take, a bucket or a half a bucket of rock and crush it down to coarse sand. And then I can split it down using a splitter and then send off a pound or so to the assay lab and have them do the final pulverization. Well, there's a reason for that, Alex. The reason I don't go into timber, I'm not a timberman. Okay. It's to a certain extent beyond my area of expertise. Now, I know how to put timbers up, but I don't know more precisely when to put timbers up, except when I can see that the rock is getting a little sketchy or I just don't like it, I'll timber it. And hey, Rock, watch my videos. I got timbers. I'm putting in some decks in there. But yeah, rock bolts generally work better. And even holding big stopes open, you can use cable bolts. But I say for the small scale guy, especially stuff like, say you've got a portal and you're trying to establish a safe portal. It is if you've got the right equipment, Rock. If you don't have the right equipment, if you don't have a jack leg and an air compressor and the drill steels and hoses and water to keep the dust down and blah, 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 it's real hard. Almost anyone can saw some timbers and put them in place. So I agree with Alex that in a non-commercial small scale setting, quite often timbers are used simply because the tooling required is very, very basic. It's just standard construction hand tools. One thing I have found, culvert works real good if you got some pretty crappy ground right at your portal, and you don't want to just dig the whole mountainside away because it's just going to keep coming down until you get to hard rock. If you can just kind of dig out a hole and shove that culvert in there and then bury it, where it's out, that'll give you a good secure opening pretty easy. Yeah, I thought Mount Baker's video was very, very good, Rock. I thought the tour that they went on was very well done. It's a lot better than Butte, Alex. Your underground tour over there in Butte is just pitiful compared to Bisbee. Well, on the other hand, they've got, what is it, Freeport McMoran funding it too instead of a school. Would it be possible to use the decaying leaves of cherry trees to provide cyanide for a heap leach? I'm not sure exactly which cyanide complex that is, but you're going to need more than just that. You're going to need some pH adjustment and such too. And I say, I don't think it would be very efficient. Yeah, muckraker. I've made a video about it years ago. I was up in Oregon, and the mine owner came up with that. I didn't, and we drove up to Portland to get the culvert. Even I did, using his truck and his flatbed and stuff. And he had a little mini excavator, and by golly, it worked like a champ. It was a pain to get in there because there was water running out the portal, and there wasn't good drainage. And so it was pretty darn sloppy. And so it worked really, really well, especially as that's some pretty crappy ground right on the surface there. It had some rock that, I mean, it's Oregon, lots of rain and stuff. So it had decomposed pretty well. And even though they'd taken a good divot out of the side of the mountain, it still wasn't stable at all. And they'd had a slide that had reburied it again after some rain. And, I say it was just one of those things that in that case, it just worked great. Now I've, in the desert where you've got very little rainfall, it's not unusual at all to be able to, clear the portal area of any loose rock well enough to secure it without a problem. But when it's crumbling, yeah, that culvert, it goes in there. It's even better than rock bolts because it's 100% rock proof in terms of it just can't find its way through, And so I like the culvert when you're going through soils or badly decomposed rock for 10 feet, especially if you got a big hillside on top of you. And you can't just say, well, we're just going to dig in until we get to something solid. And then we'll timber up, lag out, and stuff falls down on the top. No big deal, Yeah, I say you can do all kinds of things. In this case, the drainage was just out the bottom. It wasn't very much, so it was pretty easy. But deepest I've ever been, Alex, was I think about 2,500 feet over at the San Manuel mine in Arizona. That was block caving. That was kind of cool. They also had big trains too. They had I think 20-ton ore cars, 10 of them per train or something like that. They moved a lot of rock there. They had 5 head frames just for hoisting ore. That was big. And then on the surface, you had a divot in the Earth's surface about 450 feet deep where it had all been sucked down in. Where I worked in New Mexico, it was fairly hot in the headings. It was about 90 degrees and you could see your breath. And that was, not much fun up in the heading. Because it was uranium, they had so much air moving. Unless you were up in the dead end headings, and just working off of a vent bag, it was usually pretty nice temperatures. We had more trouble of freezing in the winter. It got pretty cold, and the shaft could actually freeze even with a big shaft heater. And for those of you who don't know what a big shaft heater is, it's a big, like 8 or 10-foot diameter pipe with a bunch of burners in it and a fan. And they light those burners up, and that fan blows that hot air out over the shaft, and it gets sucked down, from the ventilation uh, fans that are set farther away. And because you got to keep the radon levels low in a uranium mine, they got to move a lot of air, hundreds of thousands of cubic feet per minute. So it gets pretty breezy at the shaft. Yeah, kind of like rock. Nope. Mr. Lodak. Yeah, it was also the very popular spot to be leaning against while waiting for the cage to come and get you to take you down in the middle of the winter. Fumes, no problem. No, natural gas burns plenty clean, and they were probably heating the air to a temperature of, I don't know, it couldn't have been dangerously hot coming out of the pipe there. So probably in the neighborhood of 120 degrees is what they were shooting for. And that would be with the outside temperature had to be below 32 degrees before they'd fire it up. Because the reason they were doing it wasn't for our comfort. Trust me. It wasn't for the comfort of the employees. It was to keep ice from forming on the rails in the shaft so that the cages and the skips could keep running smoothly. They had to keep that above freezing. One night it was so cold, like 20, 25 below zero, that the shaft heaters, and they had two. They'd usually run one. If it was really cold, run two. They had both running at full speed, and they just couldn't keep the shaft clear of ice. And so they had to pull everyone out of the mine because they just had no way of getting anyone out. So they had to pull all the people about an hour before end of shift on swing shift, and they just called it a night, got everyone out, because you can't operate in a mine if somebody gets hurt, you can't pull them out. So the thing was, it was freezing up, and they tried a few things. First of all, and for those of you who are familiar with the subject, on the top of the cage is something called the safety dogs. And what those are is some steel cams with serrated edges that are held back away from the guides. And the guides are redwood. And the reason they're redwood is so that these dogs can actually bite into them. And they're held back by springs. The weight of the cage works a mechanism and holds the dogs away from that. If that cable snaps, big heavy springs drive those dogs into the guides, and then the cam action drives them in tighter, and it just stops the cage. You're just sitting there. Now, the problem was we were 1,000 feet below the water table. So here's this water dripping down the shaft at all times. That's just the thing. It's gotten below freezing. The safety dogs on top of the cage were encased in a giant block of ice and therefore far from functional. And I was on the first cage out that night because we were on the lowest level. And as they pulled us up, that cage was hitting the ice on every cross brace. Every 10 feet, there was, another framing section in the cage. So as we were going up, it was bam, 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 like this. We're like, boy, I sure hope that cable don't break, because we're going to have a short but really exciting ride to the bottom, So that was not a whole lot of fun. There was two times I had a real exciting time on the cage. One was at the various elevations in the shaft, they had various speed limits. Okay. Now, I don't know why they determined these speed limits, but whatever, they're there. And if you exceeded the speed limit for that section of the cage, the safeties cut in on the hoist. Now, the safeties on the hoist are real simple. The main brakes come on, the power goes off, and the emergency brakes come on. And the emergency brakes are powered by weights. They're sectional weights, as I understand. I didn't do it myself. But anyhow, they literally drop onto a lever, which binds the emergency brake. Now, the problem is when this happens, then the hoistman has to get out of his fancy little cage and manually reset the weights. So it takes a little time. So we're going up, and he accidentally kicked it into high gear when we were still at the lower part of the shaft where that was not acceptable. And we're like going, oh, this is going to be a quick trick to the holy shit. And all of a sudden, say that hoist just locks up and our feet come off the floor of the cage. And it's like, uh-oh. And then as it, as we come back down and we can feel the cage hit the end of the cable, we're going, that's a good thing. And we're sitting there. The cable has a lot of stretch when you got like 1,500 feet of cable and several tons hanging from it. And so we were yo-yoing about 6 feet up and down in the shaft until it kind of stretched out. So that was real exciting. That was a good adrenaline-filled trip. The other time, at the bottom of the shaft, there's what they call the sump. They have to be able to lower skips down there to load them by gravity from the train level and stuff like that. And so the shaft actually goes around 100 feet below the bottom level of the mine to allow all this stuff. And there's a pump down there. There's a method for getting spillage out of there. Every time you load your skips, there's a little bit of dirt that doesn't make it in. And so we have to be able to clean that out and stuff. So there's a sump down there. And quite often it has a lot of water in it. And one time we were, going down, and the hoistman didn't stop us in time. Okay. So as we're coming down, we're expecting the cage to stop at the level, within a few inches, and it just keeps going down. We yelled to the station and hit the bell, because it would be it really sucked to be in a cage 50 feet below the bottom level when the water's only 30 feet below the bottom level. We were not happy with this possibility. So we were yelling at the station editor, hit the bell, hit the bell. But again, in order to exceed, I think it was like 3 feet below that, he has to manually disable the safeties, or else same thing happens. Everything locks up and you come to a stop, and it takes a while for him to undo all this stuff. And the I say I'm glad the safeties are there, but those were kind of fun, and again, unlike what Alex says in Butte, the newer systems, again, if you exceed certain parameters, it just automatically locks up to do exactly what he's saying happened there. So it doesn't happen where you don't try and pull the cage over the bull wheel. That doesn't work out well. There's a lot of different ways it can go wrong, but they're all bad. Some are just more bad than others. But yeah, it's not a good thing. This is also why the hoistman is required to have a physical every 6 months. He's kind of like an airline pilot. If he has a heart attack, bad things can happen. So the hoistman has to me, it would be an extremely difficult job. You just sit there and run a hoist, and I would get bored. You do not want me as a hoistman, trust me.
I was a hoistman.
Well, yeah, but you weren't doing it all day long with nothing but bells to guide you. Now she probably could do it. She can focus
I
like
want
that,
a bell.
you know. Well, yeah, but you wouldn't be. I mean, we're talking every couple minutes. Um, the and they had two hoistmen, I'm sure, because you had somebody who was mucking ore with a dual drum hoist that was pulling ore skips at the same time that they could operate the cage. And so you had to have two hoistmen. And uh, I say there's just things. Alex says that hoistmen are so important. They have an airtight office and oxygen bottles in case of fire. They stay until every man is out. Well, would make sense.
I didn't even have a bell.
Yeah. He said those wire ropes are so strong that if the cage gets stuck, this is rock, it will either destroy the cage or pull the hoist itself off its mounts before the rope breaks. I don't know. I do know that you can only run that cable for so long before they have to replace it. Because at least one time when I was at the mine that day, they were replacing the hoist cable. I believe those cables were just standard wire rope. Well, I'm sure it's high strength and stuff like that. But nowadays, a lot of times they use a plastic impregnated wire rope because the plastic protects it to keep dirt and water out so it can't rust, and it gives a little bit of internal lubrication too. And as I say, so they look like basically the ones I've seen are blue. It looks like a blue piece of plastic tubing, but that's just the outer, you know, surface of that plastic impregnated wire rope. Those are used. That's exclusively what they use on shovels, rope shovels, because that keeps dirt and grit from getting into the wire rope and grinding away at that stuff, which is bad, you know. And
I want a bell.
we'll get you a bill, ding a ding. But I say they have very specific criteria for these sort of things, um, because they found out from bad things. As the secretary at United Nuclear told me when I hired up there, she handed me the safety manual and said, "Remember, this manual is written in blood. Every rule there is because somebody either got killed or seriously injured doing what they're telling you not to do." You know, um, and that's the way it is. You don't have a safety rule where nobody got hurt. That's not how it works. And sometimes you look at this stuff and you go, well, yeah, but again, you got to think there's a rule there because somebody didn't go, well, yeah, and wind up being hauled out on a stretcher. Um, yeah, it's some serious business. It can be fun and interesting and this and that and the other, but there's a lot of different ways to get killed or crippled mining. It's you have to be very very careful, and yet if you're too timid, it's awfully difficult to get the job done. So you're always trying to strike that balance between productivity and safety. And sometimes that's hard to do. There's been a few times I've, gone the wrong side of that line and got lucky. That's not a safety plan. Being lucky is not a safety plan, you know? That's true, Alex. Near misses also count too. Not sure what a copy hoist is. Rock? Not sure what the acronym means. But yeah, say it's interesting. Um, we've I've done some things which were you know potentially dangerous if you weren't paying attention, and other things that are just inherently dangerous even if you are paying attention. You just got to be quick and hope. I agree, Alex. One of the guys at United Nuclear said he went down to, I think it was Venezuela once, had a mine there, and he said it was like in 6 months they went from I think it was 110 miners to 70 something, and they weren't quitting; they were being carried out. You know, and that was just ridiculous. Okay, Rock, take a good head frame, but makes sense. Especially as in a lot of those things, they have subshafts where essentially that's where the hoist is. Doesn't need to go over a bull wheel. Yeah. Um, by the way, folks, when it comes to hoisting, when you're hoisting in deep mines, the weight of the cable becomes a limiting factor. Um, the cable has a certain tensile strength. It can hold a certain amount safely. Once you have a cage and so much cable hanging from that cable, it approaches the safety factor. And even with, I don't know about now, 20, 30 years ago, even with the best cables out there in terms of strength to weight ratios, in the South African mines, you could only run a single hoist about 6,000 feet before that became your limiting factor. So, what they would do is they'd drive a shaft roughly 6,000 feet because they had to get down to up to 18,000 feet. They drive your first shaft down to like 6,000 feet, and then there's a horizontal transit basically. Men would get out and walk across, equipment would be moved across, etc. And then there'd be another what they call a subshaft, that would go down deeper. And in the deepest mines, they'd need a second subshaft just to get to where they needed to go. You know, and so that's really, a critical factor. I mean, say you hang a mile of cable below you, it's going to weigh something, and that's where the issues come in. Yeah, Alex. Well, if they can ever figure out how to make graphene into a cable that's reasonably, cost, then they can really cut the size of that cable down to almost nothing compared to what we're thinking. We're thinking a cable this big that can hoist hundreds of tons. My question would be, what happens if you hit it with a sharp object? How easy is it to cut? That's one nice thing about steel cables, is they're relatively resistant to being cut by something else. And unless it's got limitations. You just can't afford to take that chance. But yeah, I say graphene is like 100 times stronger than steel in terms of tensile strength. To my knowledge, they haven't got to the point where they can do it, because if you could make a gazillion individual molecules as long as you wanted, that would be fine. But that's not how the way it works. You have strings next to strings next to strings that are kind of sticking to each other, and that creates your cable. And how well can you stick them to each other and stuff like that? I don't know. If it flexes, what happens? I don't know. As they mentioned, the space elevators, theoretically, you could take a long cable, and it would be a tapered cable because it needs to be stronger in the middle than at the ends because of this same thing here, and put a large rock way out past geosynchronous orbit so that it's pulling on the cable, and then you could run elevators up and down. My question is on all this is, how does the dynamics work? Doesn't this thing flop around a little bit or something? I really don't know. And so they've got a lot of stuff. I know they tried a space tether up there from the space shuttle one time, and it went cattywampus on them. You know, they were having trouble with just flopping around. So I'm not sure how well that will actually work in practice, or whether they might have to actually have like active vibration dampening or something on such a thing. But yeah, I say they haven't really got that one um, working smoothly yet, but it has a lot of potential. Oh, is that the right harmonic? Yeah, I'll say harmonics, and yeah, I'm not sure how it would. Yeah, yeah, the various orbital velocities, because you can't just take something like this and go around the Earth like this, because this is orbiting at a different velocity than that or that. I mean, they want to. And so it becomes a real issue and a lot of math, a lot more complicated than anything I can ever deal with, is involved. And so, um, as I say, I don't know what it is. According to Rock, you can have a similar effect even in a cage down a long shaft. What kind of deflection do you get, Rock? I was unaware of that, but it makes sense. Oh. So, anyhow, I say that was the cage is always one of the funny things. Reminds me of a joke. The newbie gets on the cage with an old timer. They start lowering it down the shaft, and newbie says, "What happens if the cable breaks?" The old timer says, "No problem. They got plenty of spare cable." So, yep. Coriolis effect, yeah. Yeah, it also happens with miners too. They rarely make it to the bottom. They always get hung up in the steel usually. If it's a long enough shaft, they just get hung up on the framing somewhere down there. Yeah, that wouldn't be a fun way to go. Not at all. So, anyhow, um, those are some of the basics of the nugget effect and sample size and stuff like that. I'm going to try and make a video on it this week when the stuff shows up from um, Coulter, and you also get to see how his stuff works. Um, I'm not sure. I mean, these are first iterations. There may be some changes. He's a pretty sharp guy. I think he's a really good uh, inventor, so to speak. I mean, this guy puts together stuff and it works out well. So, 7.9 earthquake in Turkey on the 2nd is, I think it was yesterday. It was the 5th.
Yeah.
It was last night. Yeah, Alex. Actually, modern global politics is real simple too. They're freaking crazy and dangerous. You know? Would that not us put us in the realm of HARP with the vibrations? It would be high altitude. You might also get some electric discharge effects. You might have magnetic, induction in the. I mean, if you're using carbon, it's conductive. So, how long is the shaft for it to hit the site? Not sure, Jeff, but I don't think it's too much. It's probably only a couple 100 feet. Depends on the diameter of the shaft, too. What's on your mind, Keith? Hair. But would you have shot that balloon down sooner? I think I would have tried to take it down. If I knew it was coming in over the Pacific Ocean, I would try to drop it off the Pacific coast before it could do anything. Montana is big enough. It should have been fairly easy to find a spot where they could drop it, you know. Um, I don't know all the variables involved. To a great extent, Ricky. How can you know? How can you tell a politician's lying? His mouth is moving. What's an honest politician? One who stays bought. Yep. Um, and I know if Eva was furious about it. She wanted to drop that thing right away. I can understand being concerned about it landing on somebody.
We have plenty of uninhabited space.
But there's a lot of empty space around Montana. So I say, I don't know. And how long were they watching it come? Is this something they just found out about when it got over Montana, or did they know earlier?
Oh, they claimed they knew the second it took off from China. They just watched it the whole damn time.
Really?
Yeah, you missed that part.
Okay. According to Eva, they've said they saw it when it took off. It's like, okay, well, before it got into it, we should have told the Chinese before it comes into American airspace, you're going to have to bring it down or we will. And, don't send anything over our airspace without our permission. And in Alaska, there's lots of empty space. So it would have been a piece of cake over Alaska. And we got
in the part of Canada that it went over,
yeah.
There's lots of empty space.
You're right, Jeff, too. It also depends on how far you were from the equator as to how soon the dart would hit the wall of the shaft. Due to regional stresses, tunnel's direction may affect how much support it needs. Yeah. Well, the problem is at 60,000 feet, we don't have anything like a helicopter or anything go up and hook onto it. Again, if they were thinking about such things, they could have tried deflating the balloon. Now, as far as I know, a Raptor can fly at over 60,000 feet. And you put inert rounds in the cannon and you just fly, so you're going to go directly over it and you switch the cannon on at a particular spot so that your bullets are going to drop into the balloon itself, not the payload. Punch some holes in it and let it come down, And but there's nothing we have that can move slow at 60,000 feet. And Ricky, yeah, they may not have wanted it intact too. I mean, I don't foreclose the possibility that they were cooperating with the Chinese while trying not to look like it. Possible, Alex. I don't know. When we find it, we can find that out. But even then, it looked to me like the Sidewinder might have done damage to the payload. Don't know. I say. I thought so. I thought so. Looking at it, Alex, I didn't hear, but I thought they used an inert warhead on that, and it would make sense. There's no sense using a frag warhead, and I don't know how good the proximity would work anyhow. Most proximity fusing, I think, is done by radio waves, and it's hard to tell how good a reflector it is. And it's not exactly what the AIM-9X was designed for. So I don't know what it is. Yeah, I saw Ward Carroll's thing. Oh, by the way, Chris, what do you think of that runway incursion in, what was it, Austin, Dallas, whatever the heck that was? I presume you saw that situation on Blanco Lirio the other day. No, Ricky, a C-135 does not fly at 60,000 feet. Yeah, and I don't think the FedEx pilot, or no, it was a UPS pilot, is going to accept those landing instructions again, in a situation like that, he'll say going around, you know. For those of you who don't know what Chris and I are talking about, there was a near disaster that just happened. I don't know, Austin, Houston, something like that. Some Texas place in Texas where in a dense fog, basically, a United Parcel aircraft was coming into land, whereas the Southwest, I believe it was, airliner was taking off. And the air traffic controller should have never allowed that to happen when they were that close. One plane's 3 miles out coming into land, while the other guy's not on the runway yet. So by the time he got on the runway and accelerated down, by the time the UPS pilot can see the other plane, they're basically like this. And the Southwest pilot is going too fast to stop. So, both planes are kind of doing this thing and then trying to get it out of each other's way. It's not often that a pilot tells another pilot what to do. And that the UPS pilot was not asking. He said, Southwest, abort, And as I say, that was a close one. I think they got like maybe 150 feet apart vertically and 0 laterally. Yeah, that was just crazy. Somebody needs to go to jail. Well, maybe not jail, but they need to lose their job or something serious. I think the ATC screwed up. I think the Southwest pilot screwed up. He should have declined to do so. You're cleared for takeoff. I'm going to wait for that guy to come in first. Let me know when he's off the runway and clear me to take off again. But I'm not going out there, especially, I say, when you got, the visibility was like 500 to 1,000 feet, basically. And at the speeds they're going, that's nothing. So, I say that was just, humans do dumb shit, Agreed, Chris. That's why I say I'm thinking the ATC should probably be fired. That's my thought. I think the Southwest pilot should be disciplined. At least he knew what was going on. He should have said, "No, I can't do that." You could tell that the UPS pilot, because after they cleared the other guy to take off, UPS called the tower again and said, "Am I cleared to land?" Was it FedEx? Whatever. The cargo plane. He was clearly not happy with the situation. But again, he could have also said, "No, I won't do it." As a pilot, you have the right to tell ATC, "I can't do that." And I say, nobody just said, "What the hell? No, I'm not going to play this game." So we got real lucky. That would have got pretty ugly. Anyhow, so here we are back at thing. What? Of course, Eva's going to be doing her thing. But gold dropped quite a bit from end of last week, and now it's coming up a little.
Yeah, it's gone up a little.
Yeah.
As of right now, $1,872.70 on gold and $22.33 on silver.
Yeah. So I say I think things are getting.
You can break these open.
Pretty interesting.
They
here.
don't have to be taken apart.
Oh, thank you, Tom.
Gently.
By the way, folks, I have a keen hydromatic jig. I need that sharp knife, little one, in Tucson, Arizona, that I will give to the highest bidder. If that's 0, I still rather give it away than have it be hauled off to the junk pile. I can't get it myself. And let's see if I can do this without cutting my fingers. And nobody has requests. So if anyone wants a keen hydromatic jig that's been modified by yours truly, in Tucson, Arizona, it's free for the pickup. Let's see. Any thoughts on the earthquake in Turkey and the potential for tectonic movement our way? Every time there's a big earthquake on the planet, it tends to stimulate a little more seismic activity, but nothing I know of that's in the offing is going to be terribly useful to us as miners that I'm aware of. The one thing that I'm concerned about is the Cascadia subduction zone off of Washington and Oregon. When that sucker cuts loose, life's going to be way too interesting up on the coast in the Pacific Northwest for quite a while.
It's going to mess up California too.
Yeah, California will get some damage also. There we go. Here you go. Why are you doing this, little one? What's a hydromatic jig? Hydromatic jig is something that was made by Keen Engineering, and it's basically a tub with sloped sides that oscillates back and forth. Okay? It has a water distributor in the bottom, and I modified it so it's doing a pretty good job of recovering down to 500 mesh and crushed hard rock ore. But then, okay, Jeff. And you where you can go pick it up over there in Tucson? Because that's fine with me. So I hate throwing away good stuff. You know? But say I've got something better than the hydromatic now that I built from a clean sheet. Oh, absolutely, pick rock. Sure will. It's not very heavy either. Well, where are you at, Jeff? I can't remember these things. I'm sorry. I know you guys have mentioned these things, but my mind is just not capable of keeping track of all this. You're in Utah? Hey, Jeff, you want to go pick it up? Sure. Anyone else wants to make a big tonight? Fine. If not, Jeff, let's talk it over, get a specific time, and you can go fetch it. As far as I know, right now, there is not a critical time period for it. But Tom wants to be able to move, and then, he's trying to get all this stuff dealt with. So I'm not able to go back to Tucson to get stuff. Even if I did, it would be like $1,000 just in gas. And my truck right now is not able to. Okay. But I'd much rather give something away than have it hauled off for scrap, You can see Tom is enthusiastic with the idea of getting something else out of the backyard. Did you ever talk to Gonzo about the motorcycle and his Porsche parts there, Tom? And the Suburban? Have you got that figured out yet? I don't know where Davis County is, Jeff. What general area of Utah are you at? North, south, central, east, west, central, just in general. Okay, at least you talk to him, Tom. It's not our responsibility as long as he knows. Yeah, David, and. But since I don't have any room up here to a great extent, I can't, I can't really haul much anyhow, so what the hell? You got to be willing to leave stuff behind. Don't let your stuff control you. You should control your stuff. How close to an eating facility to the rig in Arizona? Well, it's in Tucson. It's less than a mile from downtown Tucson. If you like
Right off
Chinese food, I know a really good Chinese restaurant about a mile and a half from there. Really fast.
It's right off the highway.
Yeah, the jig itself is 27 miles north of Salt Lake, huh? Um, and so you're looking at full freeway speeds. I usually like going straight down, getting off at Hurricane, going across to Page, down through Flag, and like that. Probably what, 12, 14 hours, something like that. I hate driving through Salt Lake. They're always working on the freeway. So, yeah, it's say if you want to go fetch it and give Tom $50, that's fine with me. You know, as far as I know, the engine is not functioning right now, but it's just a Harbor Freight Predator engine, so you can buy a new one for $150. I'm not sure if I bought that one or not. I don't think I did, but I might have. If I did, then I can probably get a new engine too, because should be under warranty. Yeah, mine does too, Jeff. Okay, you guys hash it out. Not sure. Um, hmm. No, it doesn't have a serial number either, as far as I know. This thing's like 20 years old or whatever. Is it? I think they sold them new for some reason. I'm thinking $1,500, but they haven't made them in like 20 years, something like that. I talked to Mark Keene, and he said to get them to work right is kind of tricky, and so people weren't. Uh, they're having trouble making it, and I can see why too. It's a little tricky, and it has its limitations, and that's why I say I made some modifications. But yeah, I was getting pretty good recovery on Hard Rock ore, but it's coarse gold for Hard Rock. I was getting down to 500 mesh. I've got some videos on it. You can look them up. Um, Probably in the neighborhood of less than 50 to less than 100, somewhere around there. Let me see something here, because I actually used the word hydromatic in one. Let's see, Hard Rock University. Let's see if it'll pop it open in two things. Okay, good. Hydromatic. Oh, Hard Rock University. Wish you could just a simple search. Matic. Come on, spell, Keith. Let's spell. Yeah, there we go. Latest mods and obs on the Hydromatic. Yeah. Yep. There's at least 3. There's 4. Yeah. There we go. Here, let me call this one up. Control C. Oh. Control V. There's one of them. But yeah, that's what it is. And I say right now we got 2 or 3 people wanting it. Right on, Tom. Thanks for reminding me. So the end of the night, we'll need to talk it out, decide who gets it for how much. Okay. And we'll go from there. But yeah, that's what it is. And I got it working pretty good. But the critical thing that I found out was that you just can't keep this much stuff fluidized very easy. Just doesn't work too well. But you can keep that much stuff fluidized pretty easy. So using that oscillation, the top of the pulp would grab the gold and it would settle down just a little bit, and then it would just be sitting there. But as long as it traps it, that's all that matters on the fine gold. As long as it stays in there, that's all you need. So it did. Once I found out how the physics worked and everything, then I made something specifically designed for that phenomenon, and it works even better. And it's a lot lighter. And all I needed for power on mine was a 1/2-inch drill instead of a 6 horsepower motor, So, although the 6 horse is more than you really need. But when you're shaking a tub, this deep and that wide, filled with rock, that's a lot of weight. Mine used a whole lot, because I say, all you need is a thin layer. So you didn't have near the mass to deal with. And it worked just fine. I stole their bearing idea, how to get linear bearings. Just one channel iron like this, one channel iron like that, the ball bearing in the middle, a couple stops there to keep the ball bearing from getting out of the area you need it, and then a couple springs just to hold it, the carriage on top of the frame. I don't think so, Jeff. I think I was kind of careful not to show too much of that, but there's probably some stuff there. You might be able to infer part of it or not. I don't know, but I was kind of careful on that because I would like to be able to manufacture them and sell them, or sell plans is also a possibility. And the other thing is, whenever you're using something, you use water, you need a reservoir, you need water reclamation concepts and things like that. So this was all designed to sit on top of a 55 gallon open top drum and recycle the water through your equipment, and give you wet tailings you can throw away pretty easy while not messing up the water too much. So yeah, it works pretty good down to 500 mesh. But the stuff that I'm dealing with now, it no work too well. 2500 mesh, not so good. Well, another thing you might do, not sure, is if he wants to get it, okay, and you can't get it for a while, he might be able to pick it up and then you buy it from him. Again, I'm not trying to make money off of this thing. So if you and Jeff can work it out, where Jeff has it for a while, and then once he learns what he wants, I don't know. I don't care. Say, I'm not really looking for any money, but it's a fair way to decide who wants it the most. And I say, if you guys can work it out, that'd be great. I know the geography thing makes it hard to share. That's for sure. I say some people are a lot better at fabbing stuff together than others. And so again, somebody might say, well, if I just have it for a little bit, then I can duplicate it or maybe improve upon it a little bit, and go from there. On the other hand, if somebody can't, then they pretty much need to buy one. And say, if not, we'll do some kind of game of chance thing. Okay. If we wind up with 2 or 3 people at the end of the night that want it, then we can flip coins or something. Something really fair. I'm not sure how much that is, but it's probably a decent price. Mr. Lodak. 0.0023 Bitcoin. It's probably like $50. I think that makes the best way to decide it at the end is just to flip a coin. So I think we'll do that. You guys can kind of talk this out, and let's see. Today, right now it's 7:00, so probably around 9:00. Okay, if you guys haven't decided, agreed on what you want to do with it, then we'll do a coin toss or something like that around 9:00. Remind me at the time, and we'll go from there. Can both of you guys hang around till then or come back? Cage match. Yep. 10 paces with a 4-foot drill steel. Little one, can you cover the show for just a minute while I go to the little room over yonder and also get some more water while I'm at it.
Hi, everybody. Hi. 0.0023 Bitcoin, huh?
That's $52.
Hi, Mr. Lodak. Hi, Rock Butcher. Well, my back is still sore. That nasal spray that I finally got that was on back order forever because medication shortages gives me a headache when I use it. And after reading the very, very thick piece of paper that came with it, it apparently isn't guaranteed to do anything whatsoever. So I'm not exactly sure what it's supposed to do.
It also tends to give you thicker bones.
Hi, Shaggy. Hi, not sure. No, I read the brochure because they said it's supposed to help with osteoporosis in postmenopausal women. Well, according to the brochure, no studies have ever definitively shown any correlation between it helping in osteoporosis in postmenopausal women. So then I read the brochure again about, because I was told that it could also help with pain in this circumstance. And no studies of any kind show that it does that either. As a matter of fact, the brochure wasn't quite clear as to what it actually is supposed to do in the first place. So,
As long as it doesn't cause blood clots.
Hi, Mr. Virtue. So that's how the thing is going with the mysterious salmon-related nasal spray that I'm using every night and getting a headache from. But I now own 2 pairs of excellent socks. And my oldest son is sending me another pair of excellent socks. So I have a stack. This is good. I'm going to go into the apocalypse with 3 pairs of decent socks. So we're happy here. Yeah, it's really weird, Rock Butcher. It's supposedly
What's the name of it?
It's salmon something or other. It's actually apparently made from fish bones. But supposedly this stuff is supposed to help build bone density in postmenopausal women, and it has a side effect of helping with pain.
That's the stuff?
Yeah, that's the stuff. It is calcitonin salmon synthetic origin nasal spray. So I'm sniffing fish up my nose. Oh well. Anyway, he's back. And it was out of stock like everywhere for weeks.
Rock says his wife brought him home a lotion that her coworker makes that has a marijuana base, Works like a charm in his arthritis. You rub it in, not smoke it.
Yeah.
Does it smell fishy? Shaggy wants to know.
No, it doesn't. But it burns your nose a little bit. You have to alternate nostrils, and it gives me a headache.
Chris understands it. He says it's a calcium fixing assistant. Okay.
Okay.
I don't know. Oh, okay. So let's see. Synthetic. Yep. My lotion smells like pot, but works really fast. I would imagine the working really fast and really well is the important thing. Does it have any psychogenic effects or not? I have no idea, Rock. Don't rub it on and then go driving. Okay. Then it has some.
Well, I'm pretty sure they sell stuff like that at our dispensaries in town.
Yeah, pot's legal here, so they might have something equivalent. That's up to Eva. CBD, yeah. Say we'll see how things work out. Oh, say that's kind of her call. She's got a really weird biochemistry, but I know she's tried some marijuana-based products in the past, and it
they did very bad things to my mood.
You know, and she said it had some negative psychological effects. So I don't know. If the cop stopped you and smelled it, yeah, that's a possibility. Of course, depending upon where you're at, I say like it's legal in Arizona right now. Although I'm sure that driving under the influence wouldn't be good. But if you can pass the test, then I don't even think they have a roadside test for actual marijuana intoxication.
And this is not even from the Babylon Bee.
What?
Pete Buttigieg says Biden is too successful for Americans to appreciate.
Wow. Pete Buttigieg says Biden is so successful, we just can't appreciate his awesomeness. Okay. Yeah, at least Rock. Unless you give the cops a hard time, then it'll cost you a lot more than a half an hour. I just don't understand why nobody's willing to say, when cops pull you over, don't give them crap. Some of them are not nice people. You give them crap, you're likely to get hurt. It isn't right, but, would you rather be right or dead?
Be nice, then sue.
Yeah. I mean, turn your camera on, and people. There's that one chick in Texas. She was smoking. The cop told her to put the cigarette out because they have apparently a procedure where you can use a cigarette as a weapon, so they want you to put the cigarette out. She wouldn't. She gave him crap. By the time it was all over, she was in jail, and a couple days later, she committed suicide, or at least was reported to have committed suicide. Wow, Jeff. Jeff says, I was warned that because I eat peanut butter, cops might think I'm using it to cover up other smells. Man. Uh-oh. Looks like he was about ready to do a report.
The sign must appear.
Not sure. It says, I'm now riding my bicycle to work like Pete and fall off it like Brandon.
First, there must be a sign, and then the goddess will appear. I believe that's the way this happens, right?
I don't think I've seen Lars on tonight.
Howdy, howdy.
In case you're wondering, folks, Lars is the guy that made the signs.
An open peanut butter jar with a spoon in it, huh? Sheesh.
Open container, huh?
Mm-hmm.
Man.
Well, I hope everyone is having a wonderful week in this current semi-dystopian hellscape. It's actually been quite an eventful week, news-wise. There was the whole balloon thing, and then there was major drama on Reddit in the silver subs of various types that is just totally impossible to explain in the real world. And yeah, there was an earthquake in Turkey. And in the continuing meltdown in Peru, a couple of mining companies are now at the point where they can't produce at all. A couple of copper mines and a silver mine. So things are going to get a little bizarre in that regard. Dim the lights a little, according to Mr. Virtue. You might want to find a light to dim. So let's find out what's going on in Panama with First Quantum. First Quantum has suspended loading operations at Cobre Panama port. First Quantum's said on Monday its subsidiary Minera Panama, the operator of the Cobre Panama copper mine, has suspended concentrate loading operations at Cobre Panama port. According to the company, a resolution was issued by the Panama Maritime Authority that requires the suspension of concentrate loading operations at the Cobre Panama port until evidence is provided that the process of certification of the calibration of the scales by an accredited company has been initiated. Okay, that makes sense. The miner added it might become necessary to shut down Cobre Panama if the concentrate is not shipped by mid-February due to limited storage capacity on site. The First Quantum Minerals and the Panamanian government have been disputing how much tax the Canadian miner should pay on its concession for the Central American country's only major copper mine. Only one. In December, the Panamanian chapter of Transparency International issued a communique denouncing what the organization deems as a lack of clarity in the negotiations between the government of President Laurentino Cortizo and Minera Panama. In 2021, Cobre Panama represented more than half of First Quantum's earnings before interest, tax depreciation, and amortization. It also accounts for about 3.5% of Panama's gross domestic product. The asset is estimated to hold 3.1 billion tons in proven and provable reserves, and at full capacity can produce more than 300,000 tons of copper per year, about 1.5% of global production of the metal. First Quantum said its subsidiary initiated the certification process by submitting the required proof to an accredited company on February 3rd. This could get to be an interesting situation if this continues, because Panama is not the only place that's having some issues with mining. Disruptions raise the chance of copper supply tightness. And basically they do, because right now we have geopolitical unrest going on in multiple parts of the world, many of which supply copper. And the Colombian president has reiterated negatives to allowing gold mining in the Andes Mountains. So that's another thing that has to be watched. Production disruptions in major copper producing regions in Latin America and Africa have raised the stakes for a tighter market this year, but analysts say it's too soon to downgrade forecasts for global supplies. Interruptions to supplies in Latin America, combined with the easing of COVID measures in top consumer China, fueled a rally in copper prices last month, taking them to a 7-month high of $9,550.50 a ton. Good for copper. Peru, the world's second largest copper producer, has seen social unrest escalate since early December, with key mines such as MMG's Las Bambas and Glencore's Antapaque hit by road blockades and attacks by protesters. The Andean nation accounts for about 10% of global mined copper supplies at 22 million tons last year, according to the U.S. Geological Survey, which may or may not be accurate. In Panama, the First Quantum mine is in a dispute with the government over taxes, while in the Democratic Republic of Congo, China's CMOC is in a standoff with state miner Gekaminis about royalties from their Tenke Fungurume project. Analysts typically favor loss in production from disruptions at 5% of total mined copper supplies. Wood Mackenzie analyst Nick Pickens said the risks to supply from Latin America are high, but we already have over 1 million tons worth of disruption built into our mine supply forecast.
Nick Pickens? Are you...
Nick Pickens.
Nick.
Yes, Nick Pickens. And yes, I agree with you. It's a very, very unfortunate name. They already have over 1 million tons built into their forecasts. They may be being a little bit too optimistic here. There are concerns around Tenke in Congo, but even with disruptions, we do see copper supplies growing. Mined copper supplies are expected to climb more than 5% this year to between 23 and 26 million tons due to new projects such as Anglo American's Quellaveco in Peru. Yeah, a Peruvian project that may actually get off the ground. Yeah. Leaving the market with a small surplus. Peru is obviously a concern, but so far production disruptions haven't been that significant, said Macquarie analyst Alice Fox. Logistics are impacting ability to transport supplies in and concentrates out, so the risks lie with the duration of the protests and road blockades. But we note the government is working to clear those. However, analysts at Morgan Stanley, which also uses a 5% disruption allowance, are convinced copper supplies will come under pressure this year. For 2023, we set the disruption allowance at 5.5%, rising to 6.5% in 2024, to account for what we think are heightened supply-side risks. The goddess seldom agrees with Morgan Stanley, but in this case, the goddess agrees with Morgan Stanley here. Very good planning on their part. And they may be being too optimistic. So let's see what else is going on. A few other things, we did find the nuclear stuff going on. New device converts wave energy into electricity to power tsunami and hurricane sensors. Now, this is a rather interesting thing. Researchers at the U.S. Pacific Northwest National Laboratory are working on the development of a new cylindrical triboelectric nanogenerator, a TENG, a small powerhouse that converts wave energy into electricity to power devices at sea. I like this. The goal behind the new device is to permanently keep the charge of sensors used to monitor tsunamis, hurricanes, and maritime weather, as changing those batteries when they run out requires significant effort and resources. Larger versions of this generator could be used to power ocean observation and communication system, including acoustic and satellite telemetry. TENGs are low-cost, lightweight, and efficiently convert slow, uniform, or random waves into power, making them particularly well-suited to powering devices in the open ocean where monitoring and access are challenging and costly, said Daniel Deng, a PNNL laboratory fellow and co-developer of the new device. Deng and his team took a novel approach to advanced cylindrical TENGs for use on the open ocean. Their patent-pending frequency-multiplied cylindrical triboelectric nanogenerator uses carefully placed magnets to convert energy more efficiently than any other cylindrical TENGs and better transform slow uniform waves into electricity. So far, the prototype has been able to produce enough electricity to power an acoustic transmitter, a type of sensor often included on ocean observing platforms that can be used for communications. This is about the same amount of electricity it takes to power an LED light bulb. Okay, very, very small amount of power then. We're developing the FMC TENG to power everything from ocean observing platforms with multiple sensors to satellite communications, all using the power of the ocean. Very interesting. At any rate, you may have noticed we had a jobs report come out. Much celebration has ensued because the job report numbers were so good. They were too good to be believed. They're beyond stellar. They're beyond amazing. They're beyond fact. As a matter of fact, they're probably so far beyond fact that they're also beyond fiction and not even related to reality, but that's another story. We had added about 517,000 jobs. So the fishy jobs report boosts the dollar. Last Friday's job data sent shockwaves through currency and metal markets. January's jobs report was stunningly good, according to CNBC. It prompted currency traders to buy up US dollars and short sellers in futures markets to pounce on gold and silver. The highlights: non-farm payrolls increased by 517,000 versus analyst estimates of just 187,000. The official unemployment rate fell to 3.4%, the lowest since 1969. Let's see, 1969. Men landed on the moon. We were in the middle of Vietnam. The song For What It's Worth was very popular. Yeah, that's about right. Skeptics say something smells fishy. How did the economy manage to add 3 times more jobs than forecast? And what's behind the supposedly lowest unemployment rate in decades amid a wave of corporate downsizing and multiple indicators of a broader economic contraction underway? The official unemployment rate is more of a statistical fabrication than an approximation of the actual rate of joblessness. Millions of people who have been out of work for too long are statistically scratched from the labor force and not included amongst the ranks of the unemployed. If you've been unemployed more than a certain amount of time, you essentially disappear, just so you know. If you're underemployed for a certain amount of time, you essentially disappear as well. Well, about 3/5 of a disappearance in that case. That's a rather odd number, but it works. Millions more Americans are stuck with low-paying.
Constitution that got people upset.
Millions more Americans are stuck with low-paying part-time jobs or gigs that keep them technically employed, even though they're actually looking for but not finding full-time work. Yeah, this is called the chronically underemployed. Today, side jobs can be easily found on the internet, but real inflation-adjusted earnings for workers have been in decline for decades. A job isn't what it used to be. Yeah, that's true. A typical wage earner can no longer support a family comfortably thanks to the ever-rising cost of living. While President Joe Biden cheered the latest unemployment statistical concoctions, large numbers of Americans, both employed and unemployed, say the economy stinks. Yeah, really. As ABC News reported over the weekend, 4 in 10 Americans say they've gotten worse off financially since Joe Biden became president, the most in ABC News Washington Post polls dating back 37 years. And that's even with them skewing their polling to favor certain demographics. Of course, government economists and the Federal Reserve policymakers don't pay much heed to these sorts of indicators for real-world financial conditions. The Fed has continued to raise interest rates in part to cool the labor market, repress wage growth, and drive more people out of work on the assumption it's running too hot. The latest jobs report may encourage central bankers to continue hiking. The risk to precious metals investors is the U.S. dollar index embarks on an upswing here, reversing its steady decline since last fall. While a bounce is certainly to be expected, given the stunning nature of the jobs report, that bounce could be fleeting. If a recession is taking hold, as dismally social mood readings suggest it is, then no amount of statistical window dressing will be able to cover it up. And historically, gold tends to perform well when the economy turns down, because central bankers will inevitably pivot from tightening back to stimulating the loose economy. So about that jobs report. The goddess took a little look at the jobs report. It's getting harder and harder to find the deeper details on government websites these days. Well, it turned out that the majority of the jobs added were part-time jobs. It also turned out that the jobs that were not part-time jobs in the service and hospitality industries, by the way, were government jobs, which, as anyone knows, are actually a net drain on the economy. Therefore, if anything, they should count negative numbers. So the goddess went out and did a little more poking and discovered that if you took a look at things the way we actually used to calculate unemployment reports, and you added in the figures that the federal government has recently decided to archive and consider irrelevant, it turns out that in the last year we've actually lost about 2.5 million jobs. You know, just saying. The goddess continues to be amazed at the hitherto undreamed of levels of delusion and flat out bullshittery that the federal government is managing to achieve with their numbers. They're reaching an apex of bullshittery that the goddess did not even think was possible. It's downright impressive, actually. It really is. It's seriously impressive. The goddess has seen plenty of lies. The goddess has seen plenty of damned lies. The goddess has seen plenty of statistics. These guys are good. And Yellen the felon, by the way, was making pronouncements about how, well, the fact that the unemployment level is at historic lows and we added 517,000 jobs absolutely means that we aren't in a recession. We were never in a recession. We're not going to go into a recession. Yeah, we are not going to try and figure that one out anytime soon. That said, some interesting little things are coming out of various banking corners of the world. Because while everybody else on the level of Club Fed, so to speak, is trying to make noises that absolutely nothing is going to happen, and we are not in a recession, and we're not in a depression, and none of this stuff is going to be a problem, etc. A couple of interesting things are coming out of other sides of the financial world. For instance, we have here some interesting stuff from our dear friends at Bank of America. You may remember Bank of America. They recently got into a nice little tango with Zelle over tens of millions, potentially 50s of millions of dollars worth of money that went poof and still hasn't returned. They're still passing the buck back and forth on that. And you may remember that it's probably their turn to face the next fine for precious metals manipulation prices. I think it's their turn. Wells Fargo had an extra turn a couple of years ago. So, well, BofA has made a pronouncement. The gold market sees little reaction as the Bank of America warns it is preparing for a possible government default. Yeah. All their numbers are prehistory. Exactly. The BofA is preparing for a possible government default. This is the time where the goddess reminds you that we officially defaulted in 1971 when we decoupled from the gold standard. That was an official default, which nobody has ever addressed since then. The gold market, while off its recent lows, remains below 1900 and is seeing little reaction to statements from Bank of America that it is preparing for the U.S. government to possibly default on its debt obligations. Well, gee, the interest on all the fake money floating around out there, the interest alone, is now over $650 billion. It's going to hit $1 trillion next year. As a matter of fact, the taxes that the federal government collects don't just barely still cover the interest. So, that is something to consider there. In an interview with CNN, Brian Moynihan, CEO of the second largest bank in the U.S., said a default is an uncomfortable possibility. You hope it doesn't happen, but hope is not a strategy, so you prepare for it, he said in an interview. The comments come as the U.S. hit its debt limit last month. Since January 19th, the U.S. Treasury has been using extraordinary measures to pay its bills. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen has warned Congress that these extraordinary measures could run out by June. The gold market is not seeing much reaction to Moynihan's comments, even as it holds some modest gains late Monday. April gold futures last traded at $18.80 and 30 cents an ounce, up 0.2% on the day. House Republicans have been using debt negotiations to curb what it sees as wasteful government spending. The White House said raising the debt limit is non-negotiable. Really. Monday, in an interview with ABC, Yellen said that defaulting on its debt would be an economic and financial catastrophe. So apparently Yellen isn't aware that we defaulted on our debt in 1971 either. My, some people have very short memories, I guess. She certainly is old enough to have remembered that one. Many analysts have noted the growing risk of the U.S. government defaulting on its debt obligations will support gold's safe haven appeal. However, the threat of a default remains relatively hypothetical. Relative to what? Just wondering. Bank of America is fairly bullish on gold in 2023. The commodity analyst said it has a path to $2,000 an ounce. Now, the goddess notes an interesting thing. Before they were worried about a default, B of A was signaling a clear path. As a matter of fact, several clear paths to 2,300 an ounce to 2,500 an ounce by the end of 2024. And now, all of a sudden, at a time when gold is presenting itself as what it is, the preservation of wealth in a safe haven, the value is magically falling again. Isn't it just bizarre how that happens? The goddess is agog. The goddess does not understand the mysteries of that particular universe. Just saying, it's a little bit bizarre. Not that that's anything new. And they're not the only people that is being bizarre when it comes to the news on gold. The IMF of all people. Now, mind you, the IMF recently has been making various pronouncements that are absolutely idiotic. Not that that's anything new, okay? Just a couple of weeks ago, when Zimbabwe announced that they were going to start making gold fractionals and that they were going to be minting a whole lot more gold coins because the gold coins they had minted were already going well above spot and were working really well in their economy, the IMF went out of their way to tell Zimbabwe that they shouldn't be playing around with gold and other relatively useless things. They should be putting their money in secure debt instruments and treasuries that pay return of interest. Yeah. So that is just one of the bizarre and unaccountable things that the IMF has been up to lately. And they are now weighing in on the relatively hypothetical default of the U.S. dollar. U.S. default will be very dangerous to U.S. consumers, warns IMF head. With the debt ceiling uncertainty looming over the U.S., International Monetary Fund Managing Director Kristalina Georgieva warned that a default of the U.S. would increase rates and harm American consumers. It will be very damaging for U.S. consumers if the U.S. defaults. That would push interest rates up. Georgieva said during an interview with CBS's 60 Minutes, and if people don't like inflation today, they're not going to like at all what may happen tomorrow. The alarm comes after the Treasury Department's message last month the U.S. was bumping up against the current borrowing limit of $31.4 trillion. Let that number sink in for a minute, people. And if the debt ceiling is not raised, the federal government could run out of money to pay all its bills by June. The Treasury Department already began some extraordinary measures to keep paying the government's bills in January, including suspending investments for selected government accounts. The goddess wonders which bills they're paying, the mandatory bills or the discretionary spending. Just wondering. We've all seen how debt ceilings and shutdowns can be weaponized. So this is a time where if you happen to be in a category like we are, where you are receiving a Ponzi pittance from the federal government, or you're in the military or something else, this is a good time to consider keeping all the fiat you can get outside of a bank. Because the goddess strongly suspects that when they start cutting corners beyond the we're not investing money, the corners they're going to be cutting will not be the foreign aid to the couple of hundred countries, well, actually like 142 countries that we currently give foreign aid to. And it won't be cutting the renaming of game trails and parks and all the weird things that our government does with money that we never hear about, unless you pay attention to Rand Paul's Festivus airing of the grievances. No, the goddess suspects they're going to try to scare the living frog out of everybody by saying we're not going to be paying our mandatory fees. Because they are mandated to pay Social Security. They can't cut that off. They're mandated to pay food stamps. They can't cut that off. They can cut off the military's salary, and they've done it before. So this is just something to keep in mind. Anytime you are getting money from these yo-yos, there's a very, very good reason that money should come out of the system and be put away somewhere as soon as possible. Because the yo-yos will find a way to get their hands on it again. Well, sometimes we've gone up to the wire, and it's something Congress has always recognized as their responsibility and needs to do again, Yellen told ABC's Good Morning America. In an attempt to resolve the issue, U.S. House of Republicans Speaker Kevin McCarthy and President Joe Biden met last week. But the standoff continued as the two agreed to meet again. Congressional Republicans signaled they would like federal spending cuts in exchange for raising the limit. They would like. Oh my. Well, if wishes were fishes, we'd all be eating fish fries. Okay? However, remember the House Council of Economic Advisors, White House, Jared Bernstein, noted over the weekend negotiations over raising the U.S. debt ceiling are an absolute non-starter for President Joe Biden. Biden would be willing to discuss spending with Republicans. Negotiations over the debt ceiling over default is an absolute non-starter for this president, Bernstein told Fox News. There's a separate set of discussions and negotiations over fiscal policy. This is the same president that a little over a year ago said there would never ever be tanks going to Ukraine because that would be World War III. Don't be ridiculous. How odd. Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell said last week, no one should assume the U.S. Central Bank can protect the economy from default. Jerome Powell said that. No one should assume the Fed can protect the economy from the consequences of failing to act in a timely manner, Powell said at a press conference after the Fed's latest policy hearing on Wednesday. There's only one way forward here, and that is for Congress to raise the debt ceiling so the United States government can pay all of its obligations when due. The goddess notes that you don't have a successful lender without a successful borrower. You know, but apparently the Fed is now going to be throwing the federal government under the bus, and it wouldn't be the first time. In her interview with CBS, Georgieva also added she hopes the debt ceiling will be resolved in time. If you look at history, usually after a lot of back and forth, a solution is being found. No, a solution is not being found. A kicking the can and making things worse is what is always found, inevitably, since 1971 when we defaulted. When analysts are asked what would happen if the debt ceiling is not raised in time, they take an educated guess. That has never happened previously. Yeah, right. To some extent, peering beyond the X date is an exercise in educated guesses and speculation, said economists at Wells Fargo. Do any of us trust any economist at Wells Fargo? Really now? The closest the U.S. has come to default in recent times was the August 2011 showdown. During that period, consumer confidence weakened significantly, and a closely watched U.S. measure of U.S. economic policy, uncertainty touched what was then the highest level on record. The S&P 500 fell nearly 17% in just a few weeks, and credit spreads widened. Medium to long-term Treasury yields fell, but short-term Treasury security yields spiked amid worries about a default, Wells Fargo said in a report last month. The goddess notes that right now, in order to be equal with actual on-the-ground inflation, your stock market portfolio would have to increase about 18.2% year over year. So really now, JP Morgan said in a note that heightened market volatility is expected closer to the June deadline, but these debates have ways of working themselves out. That doesn't sound very good. The impact could be economically calamitous through a potential global recession. The globe's already in a recession. And disruptive for investors, for instance, through persistently higher treasury borrowing costs. JP Morgan said, if history is any guide, we expect policymakers to eventually find compromise. They've never found compromise. And the impact to be short-lived. Yeah. In the 2011 scenario, risk assets had a negative reaction, with the dollar selling off, stocks sinking, and credit spreads widening, JP Morgan explained. In order to prepare, JP Morgan suggests diversification, including gold and silver. They always leave off the silver, and there's a damn good reason for that. Go after the stuff they don't talk about. What they don't talk about is what they want you to forget about. In all our news, okay? The potential for a disorderly debt ceiling episode adds just another kicker for global investors to rebalance U.S. overweights across asset classes, the note said. Consider currencies and precious metals like the Japanese yen, the Swiss franc, and gold. Further, yields globally have risen, with bonds outside of the U.S. also now providing compelling income and protection. Watching the government is like watching a good magician. Don't listen to what they say. Watch what they do. And watch what they don't say. Like that wonderful train derailment we had out in Ohio a couple of days ago or yesterday. That is a truly horrific event that has EPA swarming all over the place. And nobody is still sure whether the only thing that leaked out of that was a bunch of chlorine gas that they had to do some very, very fancy things to get rid of in a hurry. All of these people are always talking about gold. And gold is a great thing. Don't get me wrong. I am a firm believer in a bimetallic standard. That said, look at what they don't talk about. They don't talk about silver. They don't talk about silver because they don't want people paying attention to silver. They tell people buy gold, and your average little guy that works at Wendy's or works at the grocery store looks at the price of a tenth of an ounce of gold with the premiums on the tenth of an ounce of gold these days and says, I can't afford that. So they don't think that they can get into this. They think that this is something that's only for the big guys. Gold is the money of kings. Silver is the money of gentlemen. Barter is the money of peasants. And debt is the money of slaves. So what are they encouraging all of us to do? Oh, take out a whole bunch of student loans and get in $100,000 in debt because that degree will pay off. You know, we need more PhDs in romantic comedy or gender studies or comparative underwater basket weaving. Pursue your passion. That's what these student loans are for. Oh, yeah, payday loans. You're broke? You need $50 to pay your bills? Ignore all the little fine print that says 300% interest over a year. Just borrow $100 right now. You can pay it back next paycheck. $120 then, of course. What do they encourage the little guy to do? They encourage the little guy to put their money in an IRA or a 401k that becomes the property of a bank to be invested so the bank can make a profit. And they say, oh, well, it's FDIC insured. Well, the FDIC only has enough cash to cover 1.3% of the crap that they have insured. Do you really think that when they start paying out that 1.3%, if a bank fails, the little guy is going to get their money paid off? I certainly don't. They push gold in part because it is an exclusionary tool. The little guy looks at the price of a gold bracelet for his girlfriend and says, I can't afford that. The little guy can afford an ounce of silver. The little guy can afford 4 silver quarters. The little guy can afford a Morgan silver dollar from the coal bin. The little guy can afford silver. It's the people's money, which is why they never talk about it. Because they want it to continue to go into the solar panels that are heavily subsidized, that are not green in any way, shape, or form, that go on richer people's houses. They want it to keep going into electric vehicles. They want it to keep going into iPhones and iPads and all this other crap at the current $22.33. And more importantly, one of the reasons they want to keep manipulating these prices is because they want people to not see it as what it is, real money. If people see price discovery in metals, then people will say, metals aren't just boomer rocks. They're real money, and maybe we should be using real money again. And that would be a very bad thing for these people. It might result in a lot of bankers decorating lampposts once people figure out exactly just how badly our banking system works diligently to screw us all over. Because that's just what they do. Meanwhile, if you don't hold it, you don't own it. Bye.
Better make sure I own it. Had some water somewhere. Oh my goodness. Let me see something here. Let me get that link again here. Oh, no, that's not going to work, is it? Dummy. Got to do this. Got to do this. And get that. Control C. Go to this. It's almost like I knew how to do something. Too bad I don't. Hey, Ricky, how's it going? Come on, enter. Okay. Anyhow, they're thanking you all, little one. Not sure really liked your debt is the money of slaves thing. Okay, I just put up a link there for those of you who came in late. This is a visual aid for the discussion, primary discussion tonight, which was on sampling and stuff. Oh my goodness. Can you get me some toilet paper, little one? I got another one of them damn beetles around here. We have these weird beetles.
Juniper beetles again?
Yep, juniper beetles.
Good grief.
That's a U.S. penny. I think it's one of the later model ones.
Yeah,
Here, little one.
model penny.
Little one, here. Throw that in the toilet, please.
It's a new model penny. I just needed a toned one.
Yep. Anyhow, so that bead you're seeing there is what was it? 4/100ths of an inch across. Not millimeters. There we go. That's what I guess. Point. No, sorry. Goodness gracious, where am I here? 0.048 millimeters? Maybe I made a mistake there. Anyhow, it's about a 1/100th of a gram. And what that represents is the amount of gold in a bucket of sample. I mean, a 5-gallon bucket of sample, if you're running about 1/100th of an ounce per ton. And that's about the minimum ore grade for either an open pit heap leach mine or a commercial scale placer mine. That's about $20 a ton. Okay. Now, if you had that same bead in a 3 kilogram sample, about 6 pounds, 6.5 pounds, then that would be the equivalent of 1/10 of an ounce per ton, which is very high grade. I'd have to remeasure it, but yeah, according to this chart here, 1 milligram should be 0.019, but I think it was more like a 0.04 if I'm not mistaken. 0.04. That would be, 10 milligrams. That's right. 10 milligrams is 1/100th of a gram. So about a 0.04 inches, 10 milligrams. And 0.04. Okay. Don't have my microscope here. Yep. So anyhow, in a 3 kilogram sample, that would represent 1/10 of an ounce to the ton, which is rich placer at a commercial scale, or fairly rich hard rock at open pit heap leach. And that one there is probably about 90% gold rock. And that is about the minimum grade a small miner can make money on if it's real easy mining, and you can do several tons a day and a few other little things. You're going to have a lot of grinding involved in that, but you're going to have to probably do better than that. If you had that amount of gold in 300 grams, now you're looking at 1 ounce to the ton. That's kind of my target. I want 1 ounce to the ton or better. If you had that in a standard assay ton of sample, which is like 28 point some grams, then you're looking at 10 ounces to the ton. The problem is the if it's in, that's a fairly coarse particle. That's like 18 mesh, and it's a round sphere, so that's really dense for something of that size. Most of them are like flakes, as the placer flakes you see there. And so if you only had one of those flakes or one of those beads in a 5-gallon bucket, how much would you have to process to have a 50% possibility of getting one of those? Well, that would be about a 5-gallon bucket. If you did 5-gallon buckets, you might have one with 0, one with 1, and one with 2. Okay. So to get good statistics, you're going to need like 10 or 20 buckets if that's the size of the gold you're looking at, and you're worrying about, like placer gold, $20 a cubic yard ain't bad. Okay. But when you're doing with hard rock, life sucks. Okay. And if you have gold that coarse, a standard fire assay runs a little less than 30 grams of rock. So you're going to get, let's see, what is that? We had a factor of 30. So 1, 2, 3, about 1,000. So you have like 1,000 assays with nothing in it, and then one assay running 10 ounces to the ton. Okay. What are the chances that you're going to run 1,000 assays to get that one? Not much. What do we spend? We spend $45 each. So we'd be spending $45,000 to find one piece of gold. Not going to work well. Therefore, if you have coarse gold, you've got some positives and negatives. 1, it's easily gravity extractable. 2, you've got to run a bigger sample. So if you had coarse gold, even in hard rock, your best bet is to crush and concentrate before you assay and weigh, or actually more like smelt and weigh. Luckily, the gold in hard rock is much smaller, and we have, I say that bead's 0.04 inches, and I made a miscalculation before, so those of you who have been here a while will notice the numbers have changed. The gold in our rock is primarily below 2/10,000ths of an inch. So if we take 0.04 divided by 0.0002, we wind up with 200. So our gold is 200 times smaller on average. Well, more like 70-80% of it is 200 times smaller than that little bead. Now, since volume has to do with the cube, so you got 200 times 200 times 200. Okay, so to get that much, you'd have 8 million of our gold particles. This means when you're dealing with a 30-gram sample, you're going to get thousands of pieces. And so you can get good statistics with really, really fine gold. The coarser the gold, the worse it gets, the bigger the sample you need. Ricky C., we do not do our own sample assays at this point. Eva is working on that, but we're going to have to get a few other things. We're going to first, as you can see, we're going to have to be able to deal with beads much smaller than that. And let's say, well, the ore grades, I mean, we need to be able to measure at least down to 1/4 of an ounce to the ton. So that means we need to be able to measure down to 0.00025 grams. That either is a very expensive scale, or you measure the diameter of the bead and go it that way. No rock, that is $45 per assay in small numbers, and you get the results back in a week. Okay. If we were to send stuff out to Skyline or Global or something like that, you're going to get it down, including sample prep, to about $30 a sample. Sometimes ALS, yeah, ALS Global, exactly. You might get down to 25, including sample prep and handling and this and that and the other. But it's going to take you a month to get numbers back. Gets pretty pricey. We're not doing a lot of fire assaying at this point. When we were doing our milling, what we would do is during the milling process, we were taking a continuous stream off of the output of the mill. I would be getting 15, 20% of the total material in the sample buckets. Then I would split those down and we could take a solid sample. But a much better thing, since we've done a number of samples and we know that the gold by and large dissolves pretty quickly, and if it doesn't, we can't get it anyway. What we were just doing is we put 1,500 pounds into the agitation tank, and we put more than that. I forget exactly how much. 1.5 times, I think, is what we were shooting for. But anyhow, we put another amount of solution in there, agitate it, and then after we dumped it out on the pad, we would take a sample of that solution, because that's a 1,500 pound sample that we just tested. So it'll give us a really good average recoverable grade of that ore. And that solution sample we take to a local guy, and it will typically take us 3 to 7 days to get a result, and that only costs us $25. So because of the much larger sample size and the fact that what we're doing is we're also testing our recovered gold, not just the total gold in there, but the recovered gold, which is, of course, what really matters, what you can get. If what you can get is substantially different from what's in the rock, then you need to work on your process. But by doing that, we get much better statistical correlation. I mean, that's basically, that 1,500 pounds runs this much. And that's what we were doing. It's also, again, it saves us $20 per sample, and it's local, so we don't have any shipping. So it's real easy, goes fast, better, a more accurate result. And so that's how we were doing it while we were milling this fall. When we're getting, we have the a chart here that does exactly that. This is bead size. For example, if you have a 1/1000th of an inch bead, it weighs 0.002 milligrams, or therefore it's 0.0002 grams, which means ounces per ton based on ore sample. No, that's milligrams, 0.0002 milligrams. So that gets you down to 2/10,000ths of an ounce per ton, and we've actually seen beads in the 0.004, 0.005 range, not from assaying, but just stuff we've done. And that gets into 1 to 200ths of an ounce per ton. So you can do that, and all you need for that, instead of a very, very fancy scale, is a microscope with a reticle in it. And that's not very expensive. So you can certainly do that, Honey Bunny. but you need a microgram scale, not a milligram scale. And so there's your problem. You gain in accuracy, but it costs you a lot more money. Plus, you still got to determine the density. So that generally, little one, do you remember how much solution we had? It was like 1.5 tons, wasn't it, in 1,500 pounds of rock?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. She agrees with my recollection. We have records, but it was basically 2-to-1. Yeah, but how did you water displacement on a 1/1000th of an inch bead? You know, that gets very, very difficult, honey bunny. You can make a reasonable approximation by looking at the color. In our case, the color is always a pretty good yellow. It looks like mostly what we're getting is in the 80-85% range. But that is because we are the solution and the resin combination doesn't absorb much of the silver. It initially absorbs a fair amount of silver, and then that gets kicked off according to the tests that Rock did for us using XRF on the resin. But the gold that we're recovering by eluting the resin and then electroplating that solution was running, what was it, 87.5?
Yeah, 87.5.
87.5% gold
87.5, 88.
was what we measured by taking a chunk of our bead, a combination bead, and then inquarting silver, and then measuring and then dissolving the silver and other stuff, and then forming it into another bead, and then determining what was the loss from the initial chunk to the final bead. I have no idea on that, honey bunny. It works okay for alloys and for things like resin where you're dealing with percentage points of gold. It kind of sucks for what do you call it? For rock analysis, because there's just too much signal to noise. I mean, noise to signal ratio, basically. Yeah, I don't know how you would build your own XRF machine at home. That sounds pretty far-fetched.
I don't want
But yeah, the XRF might be useful for high-grade ores, but for the low-grade stuff, yeah, I say the signal to noise ratio sucks. I had some more that it was a salesman from Bruker who brought over one of their things, and he looked at my ores and said, well, these 5 samples here, they've all got about 1 ounce to the ton platinum in them. And I'm like, really? I wasn't aware we had any platinum. And yeah, that was, it didn't pan out when you sent it off for, it was Skyline Labs. I mean, it's a big lab. And I said, could you assay this for platinum? And yeah, it didn't come back with any platinum in it. And so, as I say, I've got a high level of skepticism at XRF. There you are, Lars. How's it going? You dug out yet? Man, you just, at least the reservoirs are going to be full. Oh, okay, Lars. It's going to be a little boring for the next 6 days and 21 hours, but okay. And yeah, Lars. Yeah, windy now. We're doing a little thing at 9 o'clock. That hydromatic jig that was sitting over there in Tucson. I'm just giving that away, basically. So whoever wants to pick it up, um, we'll flip coins or something like that. But whoever the wins has to go pick it up sometime in the not too distant future. But I've got something that works better for hard rock anyway. Uh, I learned a lot from that, and then optimized it for my needs. But anyhow, uh, so yeah, I'm not a big fan of XRF for rock. It works great for the resin because we're dealing with big numbers, thousands of parts per million. So it works fine for that. As I was saying earlier today, it's really, really important to know how big your gold is, so you know how big of samples you need. And if you're dealing with coarser gold like that, let's say 18 mesh bead, that's easily gravity separatable. Okay, that's pretty easy to recover. But if you get the occasional bead in your sample, what'll happen is you'll have like 1 ounce a ton, 1 ounce a ton, 1 ounce a ton, 1,000 ounces to the ton, 1 ounce a ton. And so those occasional really high numbers discount the high numbers until you've proven them by duplicate sampling. And preferably, that means going and getting another sample as opposed to just taking another split off the bag. Usually that's what you have to do. But if it was contamination in the grinding circuit, that can mess things up a bit too. But that's, if you see, the occasional peak, without further information, just discount them. Just knock them down to the level of the other stuff. Well, the other thing, Honey Bunny, is how do you verify a meter reading? It's pretty easy to, when you got a gold bead, to measure it. If there's no bead, well, you could have messed up the process or lost the bead or this or that or the other. But nevertheless, if you do get a result, you can easily ascertain what that result is. When you've got an instrument, be it an XRF or a ICP or an AA, something like that, there's interferences and things that can happen, and you're going to potentially be completely unaware of them. And I say, like that thing with the Bruker guy, 1 ounce to the ton platinum. How would you know? You do another test, it's not there. But somebody explained to me there's a particular fairly common mineral or element that actually it's real close to the frequency of platinum there, and it'll tend to give you a false positive. And so I like things where I actually have something I can see and measure, whether it be through a microscope or a scale or whatever. I really like it when you can scale a bead from a 1 assay ton sample. That's very, very nice. But I say that's some of the basic principles. I should be doing a video this week. Coulter from Mining Magnets is sending me over some splitters he whipped up. One is a modification of my splitter design. Another one's a dot matrix printed plastic splitter. And we'll be trying those out and doing some tests and demonstrations and stuff so that the average person can better visualize what happens and what can go wrong during the sample preparation procedures and how easy it is to get a bad number if you don't do it right. Okay. So should have a video out this week on that. And I'm going to try and make it pretty comprehensive. The nugget effect, channel sampling, sample preparation, and sample splitting and stuff like that, all in one video. Keep it under 20 minutes is the idea. And so that's what I'm trying to do. I hate calibration, you know, but say you got to do it. By the way, we tried, because we're still waiting on our thiourea. We tried just straight urea instead of thiourea, and there's no indications we got any significant gold out of the resin. So it was a long shot, but we thought we'd give it a long shot, see what happened. We'll set up a trial balloon just like the Chinese. See, that's the funny thing. That was the salesman from Bruker, Rock. That's a sales guy. He should have had a properly calibrated machine. Say, it was not very impressive.
Well, if it was properly calibrated, you wouldn't have bought one.
Sales guys should understand. Yeah, it would be nice if they did, huh, Rock? You know, they send sales guys out, and the people are telling it to them need a tech guy, not a sales guy. Yeah. You know, I get kind of annoyed sometimes. Selling things is one thing. Knowing what's going on is something entirely different. I'm sure there's a number of ways it can happen. What is sulfamic acid? What's the formula, Chris? I talked to Chemical Montana today, and hopefully the thiourea will be in this week. Apparently, the cheapest way to get sulfuric acid is to buy battery acid in the 5-gallon jugs at your local parts store. Yeah, that would make sense, Rock. And that's, I say, somebody said there was, it's like molybdenum or something like that that can give you a false platinum or something like that. Yeah, did you guys see that video that Gruber Ned put up this week where he had a bunch of specimens that he showed? Some of those are pretty freaking nice. You may be correct, Lars, or again, it may be an interference. I have no idea. You know, your guy has a lot more experience than we do, so you know, trust but verify. To quote somebody we all know. Yeah, say if it says platinum, I would get a verification if you care. You know, if it's the sort of thing where you might be recovering it, it might be an economic. I have it checked with a top-notch lab. H3NSO3. Okay, got it, Chris. Say I would not trust a simple test like that with a lot of money. Once you verified it, and you know it's consistent, then I would say you can pretty much trust it. But damn, this reality is complicated. Yeah, I don't know how much it costs now, Chris. The price of chemicals are just skyrocketing. You know, I found it interesting that 93% sulfuric was $75 a gallon plus this, that, and the other hazmat fees. So it's running like $150 a gallon here locally, whereas the battery acid was $33 for 5 gallons. What does that work out to? 6.6 or something?
Yeah.
$6.6 a gallon, which is perfectly adequate for what I do. Yeah. I say I don't need reagent grade. I need tech grade and stuff, but that's hard for them to get. We're also going to be doing some tests to see whether a combination of urea and thiourea works longer than just straight thiourea. Don't know. Yes, but how much ammonia do you need? In my case, I need fairly significant quantities. If I was using ammonia as the leach, the primary leach, I think some of it would be outgassing. But as long as it works, not sure. Although I didn't know sulfuric acid was in capacitors. I would think they'd want an insulator in a capacitor. It would be more like a lead acid battery. I don't know. I know Lars does. I'm pretty sure Chris does too. No, I have not, Ricky. The bromine is a pretty good lixiviant. The stripping the resin, we did try Aqua Regia, and it didn't work. They do make an industrial grade professional drain cleaner at Lowe's here locally. I can get it for $11 for a 1-quart bottle. And so if I diluted that 3-to-1, get less than a gallon. So yeah, it'd still be more expensive for active ingredient than a 5-gallon jug of battery acid. That's possible, Honey Bunny. The thing is, I'm using 2 different leaching solutions. I use what I call my leaching solution for the ore, and this I have to use by the ton. And it has to be able to sit outside in an open environment and not outgas or like that. On the other hand, the stripping solution, we've tried a lot of different things. The only thing we found to date that does a good job of stripping the gold is sulfuric acid with thiourea. And so that, that's for getting it out of the resin. We need small quantities, and it has to work. And that resin is just tough to deal with. It doesn't like to give up that gold easily. In the case of our standard ore leaching solution, we need something that, it's like not going to outgas ammonia or bromine or anything like that. Gases, both because of the hazard and also because of chemical consumption. The Eco Goldex seems to do a pretty good job in the leaching of the gold out of the rock department. It doesn't take too much. I forget how much it was per pound. Let's see. about $5 a pound. So we were using about $15 to $20 per ton to get the gold out of the rock. It's stable, etc., and therefore that works pretty good. Let's say when we're doing the leaching of the gold out of the rock, that's some big stuff. You know, I say we're doing 1,500 pounds of rock at a batch. Good night, Rock. Thanks for showing up again. Yeah, Chris, that's still, I'm sure they have some around here if you needed it by the truckload. I say we're pretty comfortable with getting the gold out of the rock and into the resin. It was just the getting it out of the resin part. And well, let's see. To make a fresh batch of solution, I need about 160 grams of thiourea. So let's see, 454 grams per pound divided by 160. Call it 3 batches per pound. And I believe it was $7 divided by 3, 7.7. So $2.50 of thiourea for one batch of stripping solution. And I know it can be used several times because I've done it. Okay.
Yeah, we want to repeat those results.
So, and that amount of solution is currently recovering about 2.5 grams. So we got 1850 divided by 31 equals $60 a gram times 2.5. Okay, so I use like $1 of thiourea to get $150 worth of gold out of the. Hello, Paul. How's it going? Hey, Scotty. So clearly, that's not a huge cost. That solution, the sulfuric acid thiourea, we're running it at modestly elevated temperatures, 130 to 150 Fahrenheit. You know, not hard to achieve, not hard to deal with. But we shall see if we want to scale it up, how that goes. Right now, you know, we can do 400. We can do a cartridge at a time in the current stripping circuit. If we get some good ore and stuff, higher grade where we're loading resin faster, then we might want to make a bigger stripping circuit. But that shouldn't be too hard to do. Now, you did notice that there's a reason you try and keep metal from coming in contact with your solutions. Because that stainless steel plated it out. You know? So I say that's one reason you take real good care to as to which materials you put in contact with your solution. Metals tend to be corrodable. They also tend to precipitate gold. So you really wouldn't want any of that. You prefer plastic and glass wherever possible. Let's see. Got another 15 minutes I got to stretch this out to do our drawing for the hydromatic jig. Oh. Yeah, ammonia is a pretty nasty material. Um, it's hard to control because it's like hydrochloric acid. It's a gas dissolved in water, and it's easy to get it undissolved in the water. And so, and yeah, it's pretty nasty. So that's it. Yep, that'll happen, honey bunny. I have had accidental contact with the leaching solution many times with no adverse effects. I haven't had any adverse effects from the stripping solution either, but that's got so much sulfuric acid and possibly heavy metals in it. I'm much more careful with it, you know. I think it was the new guy. I forget what his name was. Yeah, it was Telluride ores. It was at the very beginning. That sounds like me, Paul. Yeah. And why did they have a valve in a place where it can be tripped on that could break? You know, that should have either not been available to trip over, or it should have been out of a material strong enough that it couldn't break with any reasonable force. What kind of materials can safely contain anhydrous ammonia, honey? Just not locked, huh? Locked, latched, or whatever, huh? What kind of materials are used in moving around that 316 stainless, huh? That's strong enough. That's strong enough. Yeah, sometimes when things go wrong, somebody recognizing it and deal with it quick is the only thing that avoids disaster, you know. So many people, for example, get freaked out by flames. I mean, how many times have you seen one of these things where something catches on fire and then they go, ah! You know, or in a kitchen when it's like, just put the lid on it, you know, something like that. Yeah, that would have vented a lot of really nasty stuff really quick, honey. Really, Mr. Lodak. Mr. Lodak says orange juice futures are skyrocketing. Yeah, did you ever see that Edward Sarkeesian shoot that oxygen bottle with I think it was a 50? That was pretty impressive. Uh, I think he was a little too close. I think he realizes he was a little too close and just got lucky. But yeah, that was quite the kaboom. Yeah, he does some pretty crazy stuff. I like him. He's nuts. Yeah, pretty much. Okay, not sure. So, do you want to give Jeff your chance at this thing? Let me know for sure. Not sure. Let me show for sure. Not sure. That's so crazy. Well, when we blew up the safe and had parts everywhere. Yeah, I mean, he does some crazy stuff. So that's where you need to be quite a ways away. Okay, we only got a few minutes left here, so we got Not Sure and Jeff, I know we're both interested in the hydromatic jig sitting in Tucson for basically free if you pick it up and get it out of the yard over there. Okay, Jeff, let's see what Not Sure. Once I know you and Not Sure were asking about it, and Mr. Lodak said he doesn't really want it right that. So, Not Sure, are you giving your chance to Jeff? Let him pick it up, and then you can try and deal with him later if you wish. Let me know what the deal is here. 30 days should be adequate because Tom hasn't got another place yet. He's looking, but he hasn't found one, so shouldn't be a problem. Not sure? Are you still there? Wonder if he left. Okay. Is there anyone else that wants to flip coins for it? Okay, Jeff. Looks like you've got it. Let me give you my email. Okay, that's fine with me. Not sure. Okay, there you go, Jeff. Give me an email. We'll work out all the details. So, there you go. That Tom will be happy.
There may be other things there he can snag at the same time.
You can look around a little bit. Yeah, Jeff. If you look around, if you see something interesting, let me know. You can give me a call. Tom will have the phone number. And I say, I'm just letting everything go. There may be some screens in there too, in one of the sheds. There may be a few other things there. So, all righty. So we've done the giveaway today. Yeah, I'm talking about Arizona Blind Dude, Tucson. $3.5 hours from me. Okay, so do you and Jeff want to get in the flip a coin for it? Yeah, you're over there at Silver City, aren't you? Okay, Jeff's got it. Okay. All righty. Yeah, when you go there, Jeff, let's see if we can where you're talking to me, able to talk to me over your cell phone, because there may be some other stuff there you want to pick up. Again, if I can sell it, that's better than nothing, Okay, do we have anything else tonight? Any subjects or anything like that? Oh. I seem to be healing okay, but I don't have the endurance that I usually do. Oh, well, the spiral wheels. That works well on some things and not a lot well on other things. Say. How long does it say you're going to get to Tucson in, I'm guessing, 12, 14 hours. Well, thank you, honey. We, have a nice little community here. And we got some smart people. We got, Chris and Rock Butcher and a few others, and I've got some experience. And when Jim ever shows up, he's got a lot of placer mining experience.
Don't pick on Jim.
Why not? He's not here. I can pick on him. He can't hit me.
He's probably lurking.
He hasn't showed up yet that I've seen tonight. Yeah, I saw spirals used on the Middle Fork of the Boise River dredge cons, and it didn't work real well. Kind of had to run it twice and slow, and it's really flaky stuff. The stuff that on that picture that I posted, that's that flaky stuff. It's pretty fine. Okay, not sure. When you get to the point where you're looking for some stuff in particular, let me know what your specs are, and I may be able to help you out. But it's all going to depend on your gold size. As Honey Bunny says, leaching may be a much better way, but there are certain tests you can do to figure it out. And you're going to need to do that testing before you decide on a separation process, because my equipment worked just fine on Ryan's quartz ore down there in Arizona, and we only got about 20% recovery on the stuff from Montana B. And so you really have to test. And you're just going to have to do the test. Most hard rock ores have a substantial portion in gold too fine to get good gravity recovery. Some like ours, it's, say I can only get 80%, 20% recovery. Almost a complete inverse of what it was with Ryan's. It was like 85% recovery. So that way you'll need to do the testing, but we'll be happy to help walk you through that too. It's pretty simple and inexpensive to do the testing to see what works and what doesn't. Luckily, a gold pan is a pretty good gravity separation device for laboratory scale quantities. So by using good panning techniques, you can determine how much you're losing in your tailings. And that's a reasonable proxy for what a gravity separation will do if you do it right. And it's still entirely possible that you're going to want to leach your concentrates at some point. Okay. You may be able to scalp off the coarser gold, but your concentrates may well have so much fine gold. The best way to get it is a very small scale leaching operation. But there's a lot of different ways you can do that, because if you're dealing with really high grades, there's a lot of different leaching solutions you can work, and then just electroplate it. Well, the big smelters, they used to sell loads of sulfuric acid over there in Arizona to the mines, but most of the smelters went and shut down. I don't know if have Hayden is still running. If so, they got a lot of places they can sell their sulfuric to. Oh, it wasn't accidental, Honey Bunny. It was, let's say, the particular methodology was not initially, but the idea was, yeah, we were going to do some electroplating. It just let me know what the voltage was I needed. That's where it came in handy. And once we get some more testing done, yeah, Miami, yeah, no, Miami's not the Hayden smelter, but yeah, Globe. But the new cell I'm working on now may not even require a power supply. it's pretty hilarious. We'll have to see. That would be kind of nice not to need a power supply, but we shall have to test it and see. Yeah, the problem I'm potentially looking at is the thiourea concentration. You know, I say is what am I consuming? Clearly, the solution is becoming somewhat less effective at some point, but I mean, I did 4 reuses and got, better at the end than I did when I started. Yeah, but carbon's cheap, Chris. Oh, although I did try, because again, the natural voltage was 0.55 volts. So I tried putting the power supply on 0.57 and it seemed to be working okay. You know, I have no idea, not sure. Where was the Santa Rita pit? I'm not sure. Probably Honey Bunny, but I'm not sure exactly what's happening just yet. So I don't know what I need to do to fix it. Yeah, where's the Santa Rita pit, blind dude? Oh, my throat's getting a little raw here. I think I got a little cold or something. Chino? Okay. I know where that is. A little further east than Silver City. Oh, I think I'm going to have to call it a night, folks. Um, I'm not sure if that was Jerry Pornell or not. Um, I recall what you're talking about. I'm not sure where I saw the article. Yeah, it is kind of dry air here. Though I lived my life in dry air, so that's not usually a problem. An ice wand to concentrate solution in a hurry. Interesting idea. Take care, Scotty. Uh, yeah, I understand what you're saying, Honey Bunny. Don't know as I'm getting too much dilution. Interesting concept, though. Probably have to be well below zero when you're dealing with solutions and stuff like that. But yeah, Interesting thought. Thank you. Appreciate it. Okay. Well, I'm petering out here, so unless somebody's got something, specific here or whatever, I'm going to call it a night. Thanks for coming by again, Mr. Lodak, Chris, everybody. I appreciate it. And I'll try and get that video out this week, and theoretically, I'll be back to recovering from the ion exchange resin. All righty. Happy prospecting and keep it safe out there.